So we're talking about the state of media at this, the latest in the series of New Age Business Briefings brought to you by the SABC and today kindly sponsored by 49M Eskom, helping to keep our lights on. Right, let's continue now with the conversation. We'd heard from most of our panelists just before the break, and the COO of the SABC, Mr. Motsoeneng, was finishing a point that he had about the state of the media. Let's go back to you and you can finish your point.
What I'm saying here in this case is, if you look at the lectures at tertiary level, is where they poison the mindset of young people.
God.
Because when they lecture all these people who are doing journalism or communication, they mislead them about their own country. Because they have their own views. They don't deal with the facts. So we need to make sure that at the foundation is where we try to check who are these analysts, who are these lecturers, so that we deal with the foundation. And also, if you look, if you take anyone from tertiary level, they come, they are excited, new, energetic. At editorial level, you sit and you ask them, can you come with a very good story? You know what will be a good story? Corruption. That is any journalist. When you talk about a good story, it's corruption for them. We need to change the mindset of journalists. And I want to come to Stephen. He's a very good journalist. I want to acknowledge that.
Which one?
But his weakness...
Stephen Krotis.
Yeah, Stephen Krotis. his weakness, he tried to balance all the stories and do his own research. But he has his own views, which is a problem. Because when you are a journalist, you give the facts to people. People will analyze and come with their own conclusion. Journalists should not persuade people to believe what they are saying. This is what I'm saying. We need to make sure that really we train our journalists, but we as a public broadcaster, no, we are not in this part of media. We are not with them.
You're welcome to join us anytime.
For us, it is important to portray the country in a positive way, because there are so many good stories that is happening, even now as we are speaking. But if you can check, especially print media, it's more negative stories. Where are positive stories? Have you ever seen positive stories leading the headlines? You can't see them.
All right. We will get responses and we will get questions, and I'm glad that we're getting these different views because I think they're out there and people share them. So it'll be good to see what we can come up with as a general consensus. But Maxine, you also pointing fingers at the media, saying that they're behaving as the unelected opposition. Is that what your article was saying?
No, Peter, I agree with Firial. You know, we have an extremely vital role to play in terms of Article 16 of the Bill of Rights, in terms of freedom of expression. It's an important watchdog role, especially over those who wield power, both in the state, in government, as well as in business. But what has been of great concern to me in recent times has been the almost bloody-minded adversarial approach that we in media have adopted towards, especially the government. And it has created the perception, especially in the ruling party, and some members of the ruling party are here and they may confirm what I'm saying, that we in the media have kind of put ourselves in the position of the opposition. And that is unfortunate. I think it's a road we're going down where, you know, it can only lead to...
How has that happened? Do you think that there are phone calls from the opposition and saying, listen, Ferial, please can you blast the ANC this week? How is that happening?
Look, I think there's a bit of a mindset. I think that, you know, the ruling party and therefore the government, we need to go for the most negative aspects of what they're doing. There's an unfortunate document that emanated from one of the newsrooms where you know, the newspaper aligns itself very specifically with the opposition. And you know, it's my worry is that there is a bit of a mindset in newsrooms that you know, that we are really in direct opposition to what government is doing and the ruling party. I I think it's a wrong approach. There's really to my mind, a different way of engaging, for instance, government, and trying to get away. I believe in tension. I believe in tension between the state and the media is actually good. But this bloody-mindedness, this outright kind of, attempt to pull down whatever government is doing, I think is going to lead to a very, very serious problem.
All right.
Already, I hear the proposals already being forwarded again of a media tribunal, which I oppose quite strongly. The Minister of Communications, Faith Mutambi, the other day in Parliament spoke about a media charter possibility. There are no details to it, but these are things that I would worry about if I'm where I'm sitting.
Okay, all right. So I wish I could ask lots of follow-up questions, but we've got a lot of people here that I'd also like to hear from. But perhaps just before we go there, I want to get maybe a couple of points. Reaction to what all of you have said to each other. Let's start with you, Ferial, Stephen, and then Stephen. Just in reaction to what you've heard each other say, and then we'll go to the floor. Ferial?
If I may, to my colleague, Mr. Motsoeneng, I find it alarming when a fellow journalist can sit on a panel like this and say we should regulate the media, because the public broadcaster should be a thing that's owned and is something owned by all of us as the public. So when a colleague says we should regulate the media, and that person is the head of the SABC, because to all intents and purposes, Mr. Motsoeneng is the head of the SABC, can I just say that that is a very difficult thing to hear on this panel. Any talk of regulation of a tribunal, I think, is totally unnecessary.
All right, so the idea, Stephen, of unelected opposition?
Look, there are a few things to it, and I must also respond to Mr. Motsoeneng. I mean, the first question would be, who licenses journalists? When do you remove a license from a journalist? What is a journalist in the first place? Is it someone who sets up a Twitter account called I Am Journalist? I mean, is that person not allowed to go and report, to analyze, to talk? There's someone somewhere, Big Brother perhaps, decide that actually, well, you can't do that anymore and we're going to close your Twitter account because you're acting as a journalist and you don't have a license. How do you do that? And then when you talk about good news and bad news, and for me one of the problems with this entire debate is what is the definition of good and what is the definition of bad? Some people would think that the Springboks losing to Argentina last week is bad news just before a World Cup. Some people would think, well, the Springboks aren't transformed, and therefore that's good news. It will teach them a lesson. Some people will think that the rand declining is good news because it makes what they make cheaper to people in Britain. Some people will think it's bad news because our currency is weakening. How do you decide? How can we decide? And that is one of the fundamental problems here. Also, I'm afraid, Mr. Motsoeneng, on Nkandla, it was the police minister who said these houses were built and this is how much they cost, and that they were built as part of the government-sponsored upgrades to the President's house. So it's just not true. And then the reference, Mr. Williams, to what happened down in East London in the Daily Dispatch and the document that you suggest shows that they want to work with the opposition. Well, the newspaper says that's a forgery. We can't just claim that this document, because it has been given to us, is true. I mean, to do so would be to move away from what a media organization is supposed to do, which is to interrogate the facts as they are given. Otherwise, we're just press release journalism.
Okay, Mr. Matele?
Yeah, I will have to dispel this myth that we as the media are objective. It's not happening. I stated explicitly in my column last week. I'll make an example. Let's go back to the Jacob Zuma rape case. We write from time to time in our opinions that this is a man who once appeared in court on a rape charge. And we conveniently, most of the time, omit to say he was acquitted. And I would love to challenge ourselves here. Has anyone amongst us ever taken the trouble to investigate with the same vigor the Jacob Zuma rape plotters? Have we done so? Why haven't we named and shamed these people when we know that that rape thing was a plot? We haven't investigated that. The reason is one.
That's
If-
quite a allegation
Yeah.
that you're making.
Yes, if we do it, it will reveal the truth that is very, very uncomfortable and that is not in line with our agenda. The agenda being to portray the ruling party as a party that is led by men and women who are morally bankrupt. That is the truth.
Okay.
That
All
is
right.
the truth.
Okay. All right. We'll come back
And-
to yeah.
I want to add to this tendency of us of sacrificing objectivity just for the sake of pursuing a particular agenda. I've got with me here a resignation letter of the former political editor of The Citizen. Look, the idea here is not to embarrass my publication. The idea here is to stand for the truth. This is what he had to say in his resignation letter quickly. My grave concern here at The Citizen is that the newspaper has been pushing the DA agenda. This is not me. He says Martin Williams has been at the forefront of this DA agenda. He goes on to say, how can we ever get rid of the label of apartheid newspaper when some individuals continue to abuse this paper for ulterior motives? Our paper should neither be pro-DA or anti-ANC. We ought to strive to be objective and fair in our news coverage on political matters. This is not me. I'm embarrassed to say we failed this young man. He hates the profession with passion because of us. We failed this man, and we failed the country in the process.
All right. So
This is not me. It's there.
all right,
We are
so
pursuing a particular
we
agenda.
don't know what happens inside the Citizen, and you've brought one view. We don't know what the other journalists in the organization may think. I don't know if Mr. Williams is here. Is he here? Because it would be good to hear from him as well, what his side of the story is. But we take it a point that somebody at your organization has this view and has this concern. And I'm just wondering, as we're talking now, we're talking about objectivity, we're talking is that always something that journalists must do? Are we allowed to have a viewpoint? Is it wrong to have a viewpoint? Muxine, I want to ask you.
It's a very, very deep question, Peter, but I think what we must acknowledge here, and there are great exceptions, I think the Ferial's paper and other newspapers try and do a great job week after week. Some daily newspapers do great analysis, but there is a realization on the part of people like myself, who's been in the profession for a long time, that our journalism has gone backwards.